You mean the title?
Yeah, and the characters in the book.
Oh, yes,
nostalgia,
because there's
future.
there's this sort of there's an ongoing dialogue about East and West, and I'm just trying to look for the truth in the relationships between different nationalities. So much of literature coming out of Asia, so much of fiction writing is about a historical Asia, you know, World War II, or you know, our colonial past, whatever. And I chose to tell a different story about contemporary Asia. And contemporary Asia still has these really interesting ties to other countries that are just barely beneath the surface. And I wanted to say something contemporary, modern, and intelligent about these ties without resorting to stereotypes or, you know, bringing up old metaphors of the colonial past.
So give us an idea. I mean, I'm just skipping through some of the titles, you know, and put in the subtitle, you kind of mentioned the countries that are involved in that story. I mean, are you hoping to sort of try and help people understand that relationship, to kind of capture that, as you mentioned, that dialogue going on between the different cultures? And
yeah, what I'm trying to do is to portray a Singaporean's view of the world. You know, I'm a fourth generation Singaporean, and I was here till I was 17 and went to JC and part of JC here. And so what is it like for someone like me to travel to these different countries and encounter different nationalities? And the reason why I put the different countries, you know, a lot of people say, I've never seen this in a book before. And I said, yeah, because I want to do something new. To me, this book is conceptualized as a music album. You know, you've got a song for every single country. And when I perform it, I always go, okay, are there any Australians in the audience? And the Australians will, like, this song's for you. You know, because I try to capture some of our transnational modern reality where there are all of these people flying here and there and meeting and interacting in different cities.
But because you want to also add a touch of reality and the true perspective of what people in those countries, you know, their impression of the other culture as well. Did you do a lot of research, like a lot of talking with your friends from different countries, different parts of the world, and what their perspective were, you know, were like? Yeah,
because as a lawyer, I'm an international transactions lawyer, so I have been posted overseas as an expat myself. And, you know, in the expat community, there is just so much discussion, you know, like after work about culture and what's true and what's stereotypical. And there's a sort of camaraderie among the young urban professionals who get posted overseas a lot. And through these relationships, you're able to discover a lot about each other that is something more true and more sincere than what a lot of fiction or books tend to represent. So I'm trying to capture that quality.
And I'm getting curious now. I mean, in your conversations with, you know, friends from different cultures and different parts of the world, did you discover anything interesting, like you never realized before, but hey, I didn't know that was your view of us?
Yeah, constantly. That's why it's so inspiring to, and, you know, just to give you an example, I was at the Ubud Writers Festival last week, and there were a lot of people from different nationalities there. And one of my stories is about a Scottish photographer in Hong Kong who is photographing. He's been given an assignment to photograph the life of the Filipino-made community. And he's coming in from the UK, and he's like, you know, I have no rapport with this material. But through photographing them and their journey, he begins to find you know, compassion with them and understanding them. And at the Ubud Festival, there was a Scottish photographer in the audience. And he came out, and he's an expat, and he's in Bali. And he said, you know, I read your story. Thank you for making us not the stereotypical boozer expat. Thank you for, you know, reversing a stereotype of the white expat in Asia. And so I reverse stereotypes of that and stereotypes of Asian women, stereotypes of Asian men, because, you know, in our modern society, fiction has to catch up with our reality.
But what if you happen to meet the wrong people? If you met 3 of those stereotypes instead of the non-stereotype, and and that confirmed your idea that, yeah, they're all like that, then...
Yeah, I guess I'm so, you know, open-minded that for every bad person I would meet a good person. And so what is challenging for the writer is what's new, what is hasn't been done before, and what revelations can we make in our fiction. And so if you just kind of play with the old stereotypes, I mean, you'll find a market for it, but as an artist, I don't find that very interesting.
I guess it's important to also just to raise awareness on the, the minority group in that sense.
Right.
Have you ever been subjected to typical thinking?
All the time.
For example?
Well, you know, I get mistaken for someone from China almost every day, or are you Japanese, are you Vietnamese? And, you know, I'm a Singapore-born American living in America, and I think there are very few of us. And you know, being from Singapore is not the same as being from China.
Right.
And I'm not Chinese-American, I'm neither here nor there. So a lot of it comes out in my fiction. And I think it's very interesting to be in this position, even though it's kind of frustrating sometimes. And I think I can do something for Singapore literature in the sense that I am sort of the Singaporean let loose out there.
Right.
And, you know, I'm like this loose atom trying to form molecules. What am I discovering? And through my lens, you know, on the world, maybe people who live here can start to discover for themselves that world out there.
Correct.
You know, it's tough because we all have some idea. I mean, same thing when we see a Caucasian, you may think, oh, you're from Europe. It doesn't matter whether you're from Belgium, you're from France, or, you know, it's the same. And then they're probably thinking, oh, but I'm different, you know.
Yes. Somebody asked, just in Texas, because I live in Austin, Texas, I just moved there recently, a Texan elderly gentleman asked me, are you from Mongolia? And I said, have you met anyone from Mongolia before? It's like, no. And I said, so where are you from? And he said, I'm Irish originally, you know. And I said, are you sure you're not from Scotland because your last name is kind of Scottish? And he's like, but that's very different. No, it's very different. So I'm like, well, it's very different, Mongolia and China. You know?
It's actually kind of interesting if you profile that and see, you know, where they got that idea from, what sparked it off. Sort of, you know,
some 1950s TV show that they watched growing up.
Well, let's talk about one of these stories here, because you said one particular story was especially emotionally exhausting for you. I think it was Justin and Cenotaph. What about it was so difficult? Was it tapping into the very, you know, inside of you? Or?
Yeah, this is the most thematically ambitious and structurally complex short story. It's in 5 acts in which it regresses back in time and then comes back forward in time. And it's centered around this idea of the cenotaph, which is this monument, a war memorial. We have one in Singapore. And the idea of a cenotaph is that it's an empty tomb. It's to commemorate soldiers who were lost at sea and their bodies were never found. So it's a tomb, but their bodies are not beneath it. And we have one right here in Singapore. There's one I discovered in Hong Kong. There's one in Vancouver. There's some in India. So I'm like, what's with these cenotaphs? So there's one famous one in London. And then I did some research, which took a long time, and realized that this was after World War I, and all these Britain and her colonies started erecting the same monument. These days, everyone's forgotten about it. And I started to explore further, and the story became an empty tomb in and of itself for a man's girlfriend who it's his lost love.
Wow.
So she doesn't appear in the story ever.
Okay, but that's how it all began. Sorry, we've run out.